All right, welcome. In this explainer, we are going to break down the super complex but super important world of logistics software. This is a huge decision for any business, so we're going to explore two totally different worlds to help you find the right fit. Okay, so here's the game plan. We're going to start by looking at the software pyramid, the whole landscape. Then we'll check out the world of the giants, compare them to the more nimble cloud alternatives, and then, this is the big one, we'll uncover the hidden cost iceberg. After that, we'll tackle what might be the hardest part, human resistance. And finally, we'll peek into the future of how this stuff gets implemented. First up, let's set the stage. The first thing you've got to understand is that the software market isn't a one-size-fits-all kind of place. Nope, it's broken into very clear segments, and for a good reason. Businesses have totally different DNA. I mean, think about it. On one side, you have this massive global corporation. We're talking hundreds of factories, thousands of warehouses, all juggling different tax laws. And on the other side, a regional distributor. One warehouse, maybe 5,000 square meters. These two businesses are living in completely different universes. So it just makes sense they'd need a completely different kind of digital nervous system to run things, right? So let's jump into that first world, the world of the giants. How do these titans of industry actually manage all that complexity? Well, they use what we call Tier 1 systems. Right at the very peak of that software pyramid, you've got the heavyweights, the undisputed leaders, SAP, Oracle, and Microsoft. These are the platforms that power the biggest, most complex supply chains on the planet. And here's a really crucial point. You don't just, buy these systems off a shelf. That's not how it works. Think of them more like a gigantic Lego set, a massive construction kit. They give you all the powerful pieces you need to build a totally custom solution that can run a global empire. The power these things have is just incredible. You've got deep financial integration where, say, moving a pallet in a warehouse in Germany is instantly reflected on the balance sheet at headquarters in New York. But, and this is a big but, here's the trade-off. You don't really adapt the software to how you do things. You have to adapt your processes to the world-class best practices that are literally baked into the software. And that brings us to the price of admission. The entry fee to play in this world, it starts, and I mean starts, at $1 to $2 million. And it could take years to get it fully rolled out. So yeah, this is definitely not a solution for everybody. So, what about the other 99% of businesses out there? Well, for them, the market has something completely different. It's way more accessible, way more agile. Let's talk about the cloud. We're talking about the SaaS model. SaaS stands for Software as a Service. Basically, instead of buying and owning the software outright, you rent it. This little switch completely changes the game. It turns a massive, scary upfront investment into a predictable monthly expense. It's kind of like having an app store for your entire business. Let's make this real with some numbers. Just look at a typical medium-sized warehouse over 3 years. The old school on-premise way is just loaded with these huge upfront costs. You're paying for licenses, server hardware, and don't forget the ongoing costs for system admins and updates. And boom, this chart pretty much tells the whole story, doesn't it? For the first few years, the SaaS model is just way, way cheaper because you get to skip that giant capital expense. You just pay as you go. Simple as that. But it's not just about the money. Not by a long shot. The cloud gives you this incredible agility. You can add new features as your business grows. You can rent extra horsepower for your busy season, like Black Friday. And you can even get stuff like carbon footprint calculations built right in to meet those modern environmental standards. But hold on. Whether you go with a Tier 1 giant or an agile SaaS solution, the sticker price is never the real price. We have to talk about the total cost of ownership. This right here, this is probably the single most important question any manager needs to be asking. Why? Because the most dangerous costs, the ones that really get you, are the ones you just don't see coming. The total cost is just like an iceberg. That 20% you see sticking out of the water, those are the obvious costs, the software licenses, the hardware, but the massive 80% of the cost is all hidden below the surface. So what's lurking down there in the cold, dark water? Well, everything. The fees you pay consultants, the cost of customizing the software, all the hours your team spends in training instead of, doing their actual jobs. And you absolutely have to plan for that guaranteed 20 to 30% dip in productivity right after you go live, because it's going to happen while everyone gets up to speed. And all of this brings us to what is, without a doubt, the single greatest risk in any software project. And guess what? It has absolutely nothing to do with the technology. It's about people. In the vast majority of projects, you are going to face resistance from staff. It usually comes from one of three places. First, the new system brings total transparency, which means people can't hide mistakes anymore. Second, that one employee who is irreplaceable because they were the only one who knew how things worked. Well, now all that knowledge is in the system for everyone. And third, it's just plain old fear of the unknown. People are terrified of making a mistake and breaking this new expensive thing. So you have to reframe how you think about this. This is probably the most important takeaway. You are not just installing a program. You are managing a profound, deep shift in your company's entire culture. Okay, so if it's such a huge cultural change, how do we actually make it easier? How can we make it faster and cheaper? Let's look at some new tools that are really changing the game. A huge part of the future is something called low code or no code. These are basically visual drag and drop tools that let your own experts, your warehouse managers, your logisticians, actually configure the system themselves. You don't need a team of expensive programmers for every little change anymore. It's a game changer. And what if you're stuck with some old legacy system that just can't talk to modern tools? That's where robotic process automation, or RPA, comes in. These are software bots that literally act like a digital employee. They can mimic human actions, like copying and pasting data from one program to another, building a bridge where one didn't exist before. At the end of the day, picking the right software, that's just the first step. The real work, the much harder work, is getting your people ready for a whole new way of doing things. Which kind of leaves us with one final thought to chew on. When you look at your next big project, what's really the biggest challenge? Is it the technology, or is it the people who have to use that technology every single day?